Hey there. Welcome to Conversations with Coaches. For those of you that don't know me, I am Jennifer Timborski. I'm the CEO and Chief Strategist at Virtual Marketing Experts. And today we're having a conversation with Megan Bernard. I know I just said your name wrong, Barnhart.
It's all good. Yep.
Um,
Super Americanized Barnhard.
So we're going to talk about writing, and really I am a marketing fanatic. Like, that's what my business is, and writing is so much a part of it that I'm excited to have you on, Megan. How about you introduce yourself, tell our audience who it is you are and who you serve?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jennifer. I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm a writing coach, and I help business owners and thought leaders and people with really big ideas who want to get those big ideas on paper, and sometimes run into the frustration of all the ideas are trying to get out at once, and it's really chaotic and confusing. And also for like wanting to find that writing flow. I help people not just get the writing done, but enjoy getting the writing done. So I love working with business owners who want to be able to show up and consistently create content that wows and that also doesn't drive them bonkers to write. I coach people through writing books, which is a really heady process. There are a lot of moving pieces. Book coaching is a lot of project management, a lot of keeping those writing gremlins at bay when they start showing up and saying, "Who are you to write a book? Everything's been said before." And I help people through that, through the procrastination. I'm pretty much the mayor of procrastination town. So I know all of the excuses, why it's better to write tomorrow than today. So I help my clients with that and just generally help them find their flow and find the writing process that works for them. And I am so surprised that I ended up in this place, but I love marketing too, because what I really love helping people do is tell stories that connect. And that's really powerful to do in marketing. And like sitting around the fire and telling stories that connect, I absolutely adore. But when you tell stories that connect for marketing for your business, it means that you get to grow your business, you get to help more people, you get to shine your light brighter, and you get to amplify all of the cool stuff you do. So I like being in this space as well.
I love that. And I love the way you kind of brought it back to the story, because everybody has a story. No matter what your business is, you have a story. You know, IBM and Apple, and they have stories, and they're great at marketing and branding their stories. So tell me, as a writing coach, kind of what do you do with your clients? Like, how does it work?
It's a lot of asking good questions and listening. I was a philosophy major, and I think this is probably what honed my question asking. Just being able to dig deeper and ask people the right questions, because when people sit down to write, they often put a pressure on themselves. But when they talk, that pressure is gone. So when they're in session with me, we'll start with, a goal and an intention. And I have different like packages to, take people through to get that goal. Like, I want to write my book, or I want to write content for my business, or I want to write my website. But in a given session, yes, we have the piece of writing, but it's mostly conversation. So I'm asking them questions and things will come up. And then I'm reflecting back and going, "Oh, I just heard you say this. And that kind of connects with what you said over here. And tell me how those two things connect from your point of view." Or, I'll pause them in what they're saying, or I'll point out one little sentence in something they've written and go, "It seems like there's a story there." And the part of my joy is when people go, "Oh, well, no, not really. I mean, that's just when I went backpacking across the Alps and then I saved a, deer and carried it on my back for 10 minutes. You're like, wait, what? This is some amazing, inspiring story. No, I made that one. Nobody has told me a story about rescuing a deer, but something that becomes like a point of inspiration that they then use in their content, or just gives them clarity. Like, oh yes, that is my superpower. So it's mostly asking good questions and listening. And then of course, just bringing in from my like almost 14 years of experience as a writing coach, all the things I have in my writing toolbox, like, hey, you might try an outline like this, or you might try this brainstorming process. And let me tell you the secrets of how to revise without just deleting everything you wrote. um, Can you
That
picture it?
is, that answered the question, and it's really, as you were talking, I'm thinking, oh, I know so many people that could, like, that would help walk through, right? Like that's where I think a lot of people get stuck, is that they don't know what questions to ask. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about content. I've heard you say this, a couple of times, content that connects, a
Yeah.
story that connects. So what does it mean, and why is it important for business owners to have content that really connects with people?
Sure. Ooh, such a good question. So what it means, I'll start with that first. It means you've done your research about your audience. You know your people, you know their frustrations and challenges, you know their desired results, which is marketing 101, right? This is like, I'm sure this is the stuff you do in your sleep. But for a lot of business owners, that is something new. If your business is not marketing, let's say you are a health coach, right? This may be brand new information, or maybe you've heard it and somebody told you you need to do it, but you don't know how. So that's my first step with people is let's take some really practical steps. Let's go listen to your people and what they're concerned with and capture the language that they're using. Now, when we mirror back to people the language they're using, they feel really seen and heard. In fact, the process I take people through, I call seen, heard, sold, because it's like, I feel seen, I feel heard, and now I feel sold on working with you. Or even just like sold on getting your freebie, your free resource. So that is a huge part of connecting, is talking the same language as other people. And I think it's so important and not necessarily obvious how to do it. We may go, okay, I know I'm supposed to, but we may not know how. The other part of connecting is being vulnerable. And I am such a huge fan of Brene Brown. I've been on this huge Brene Brown kick lately, listening to a bunch of her audiobooks. And she makes what I think is the most important distinction that anybody who's using social media and creating content on social media needs to hear, which is that vulnerability is about creating like a back and forth and an openness. Vulnerability does not mean TMIing. It does not mean
Right?
sharing everything without discretion. It does not mean showing up and, just being a blob of emotion. It means being like open to hearing other people's ideas and having uh, points of connection. So that is huge. To create connection, you need to be vulnerable, and which basically means you need to be authentic and honest and open and willing to not know everything, right? You can't show up and go, I am the expert and I know everything and nobody can teach me anything and expect to connect, right? That doesn't work. So that's how I would define connecting, like the language piece and the vulnerability piece, and the authentic piece. I guess on a more like brass tacks level, when you write in a way that connects, really it means you're engaging people's emotions, because emotions are how we connect. And I read a really interesting statistic recently. I've heard this before, like we buy based on emotion, but somebody at Harvard did a whole study and wrote an article, and it turns out it's a little bit more complex. It's not just that we buy based on emotion, it's that we make the decision unconsciously from a lot of different inputs. And then the way that our unconscious mind talks to our conscious mind is through emotion. So the unconscious mind makes this like whatever magical decision. And then it's like, okay, I need my messengers to go tell the brain to click buy. And it's doing that through emotion. So that's part of connection too, is getting people engaged, excited, make them feel something. So the reason that's so important in marketing probably just became clear from that last bit. About 95% of our buying decisions are going to somehow involve emotion. But there's, I think, like a more important reason, and I'd be curious to hear how you've seen marketing change over the course of your career, Jennifer. But I believe that we're in this space right now where buyers are so savvy that it's not going to fly for marketing, for businesses to come in and try to pull the wool over their eyes. Or I mean, we still see some fear marketing where it's like, if you don't have the mascara, will anybody ever really love you? Right. But I think more and more with a really savvy consumer section, people want authentic messaging, and they respond to brands that have that authentic messaging. So compare, like I was just making a joke, but it kind of is true. Like a lot of cosmetics still are marketed to play on people's fears versus like the Dove ad campaign where they had women who were like, who first of all looked like real women, not models, and then talking about body image and talking about self-love. People went crazy for that because it was like, here's something real, here's something that feels authentic and that feels good. So what was the question again?
Well, I mean, what we've talked, you've really covered, are covering it. It was really, why is it important in your business? And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
Authentic messaging that connects with your audience is what's going to bring them. Like I know you had, what's going to attract them, what's going to connect with them, and then that's what's going to drive them to buy.
Yeah. And I'll take that one level further. Thank you for reminding me where I was going. Because I work with a lot of coaches. So yes, that Dove ad campaign is really cool, but do you need to go that far to get people to buy soap? Probably not, right? We all need soap and we're going to buy one brand or another. But when you work with people at the really deep level that coaches do, so I work with transformational coaches in various specialties, but they are building a really intimate relationship with their clients. And so for them, it is extremely important to start with content that connects so that the trust is built, the relationship is built, and somebody feels comfortable saying, yes, you're the one I'm going to go to help me totally transform in this way, right? Whatever it is, whatever modality of life. Even as a writing coach, people become very vulnerable when they work on their writing. This is our self-expression. It may bring up feelings of, whatever happened in school around writing that made us feel skittish. There's a really deep relationship that comes up with coaches. And so I think connection marketing is 5 million times more important for anybody who's a coach.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I will also kind of take that one step further because if you look at the brands that are most successful, places like Nike and we'll just Apple, for instance,
Yeah.
their brand messaging is a message that connects with their audience. It is neither one of them are ever about fear. It's always about a positive message that connects. So really, it doesn't. Yes, coaches, this can help essentially for coaches, but no matter what your business is, having a message that connects is really what's going to light your audience's fire. That's
Yeah.
what bring them in.
And you're so right. And there are so many people in the marketplace, right? There is so much that is vying for our attention, and stories and emotion are what we listen to. What we'll stop and listen to, right? We'll stop scrolling and
Yeah,
go, oh, what's this about? Like the little and the power to tell that whole story in the 25 or 30 seconds of a commercial blows me away. I mean, those are some of the best storytellers ever.
really are.
Those folks who can do that and get it all good. But you're right, it's a very crowded space, and the reason I'm enjoying being in it, I never, thought I was going to go into helping people with marketing. But the reason I enjoy being in it is because right now we're seeing it's not the loudest voice, it's the most authentic and emotionally engaged voice that's getting the attention. And I I just think that's such a better thing to be filling our media with,
I couldn't agree.
right? Yeah, I mean, marketing has become something we're so engaged with every day, because it's not just when we watch TV or read a magazine, but it's all over our social media as well. And so let's create some marketing connection that makes people feel connected as opposed to isolated and afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting towards the end, but I wanted to ask one more question before we go, which is a lot of people can see content creating, whether it's for their website or their blogs or their book, as overwhelming. So, what do you have to say to tell them? Do you have any tips to just kind of when to consistently create content when they're feeling like this is a lot?
Yeah. Um, let yourself be a beginner at it. I always say, like, everybody needs to write a really, really crappy blog post. Everybody needs to write a blog post that nobody will read. When we are in school and learning the writing process, we learn about something called a first draft. But then as adults, I think we forget about that. And we think, a book is like really polished, so I have to sit down and write something really polished. And in fact, the way the writing process happens is, like, first you just kind of get something crazy looking on the page because it holds your ideas in place. And then you look at it and go, oh, okay, I want to talk about this first and that second. And you can, rearrange and revise. So take the pressure off to write something polished. And you can really do a great reframe and mind flip and trick yourself into doing some good writing if you set the intention of writing a really, really crappy draft of something. I've given that as an assignment to writing coaching clients before. It breaks through, like, a lot of people feel so stuck in perfectionism or the pressure that they can't even start, or they'll start and then they'll completely erase what they have, or they'll just feel analysis paralysis, which idea is the best idea? Which one do I start with? So I think for all of those kinds of feelings of stuckness, or even the, like, consistency thing, I have to write something great every week. No, you don't. Blogs go by really quickly. They have a short lifespan. Nobody is going back through and printing out your whole blog and reading it like a book. So yeah, write something crappy.
I actually love that idea. I can't tell you how many times that you're right. People get stuck in and myself included, oh my God, has to be perfect. And, oftentimes if you can just get something out there,
Yeah.
it's better than not doing anything. I tell people all the time with videos, with lives especially, just start.
Yes.
Easier.
You can't get better until you start. And we all have this desire to, Ira Glass has this great quote about, we read books and we consume content. And so our taste is here. But when we're just starting out, our ability level is here. And we look at that gap and we're like, oh my gosh, I should quit now. No, you should keep going so you can get better. You can't revise a blank page. You can only revise a first draft. And a first draft is, as a writer, your greatest asset. So if you can just verbal vomit something down on paper, now you can revise it. But yeah, you can't think your way to writing better. You can only write your way to writing better. And obviously getting help and support and knowing, like, what is a good outline for a blog post? And, I give people what I call writing recipes, where it's a step-by-step, like, here's how to do it. Don't try to write the introduction of your blog post first. It's the hardest part. Like, let's start down here and go back. So obviously having like a roadmap is super helpful, but giving yourself a place to start is the only way to get better. Just like you're saying with live videos.
Yeah.
Super good advice.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't tell you, just that last piece, the whole thing was valuable, but just that last piece about, understanding that if you start, you can't get better, I think is really going to help our audience really get started. So if they want to connect with you, what's the best way for our audience to connect?
Yeah. Okay. Well, two ways. I'm on Instagram at Write with Megan, and I hang out a lot there and give writing tips, and that's a good place to follow me. And then I have a further way people can connect and also connect with their audiences. I have a free 5-day mini course called Content That Connects, not surprisingly. And people can find it at meganbarnhard.com/connect. And it takes you through how to connect with your audience and how to get started writing content. I share some of my favorite little secrets and tricks, and they almost feel like cheating because you're like, wait, that's way too easy. So I highly recommend it as a great place for anybody who's feeling that kind of like fear around content creation of any kind.
Awesome. I will have that information actually in the show notes below for anybody that wants to connect with Megan. And I highly encourage you, if you have a business and you need to develop content, a writing coach is a great way to get that content moving forward. Thank you all for joining me today, and I will talk to you soon.